Okay, we're going to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have an awesome review for you from the brand Halios. Now, a little bit about them. They were founded back in 2009 by Jason Lim out of Vancouver, Canada. And he pretty much runs the brand on three principles. They want to offer quality, well-built watch, of course, that you can take into the water. So check. They want to exceed the after sales support expectations, double check. And then they also do strive to design the next watch icon, and in this case maybe even triple check. So with all that, guys, this particular type of watch, I'd categorize it as an everyday watch. And some key common characteristics and design language: when you're looking for something you can wear every day, you're really just going to be looking for that versatile blend of sporty and dressy attributes. This is your Halios Universa in the pastel blue dial colorway, and it's essentially a sister model to the Fairwind Diver and built off of the success of the Seaforth line. Now, these go for $735 direct from Halios, and they spec out pretty beautifully. 38 millimeter diameter, 11 millimeters thick, 48 millimeter lug to lug, and it's just really finely finished, beautifully articulated. And what I like is that it just doesn't look much like anything else that's on the market. And I dig that. It really is its own thing, especially in this more limited pastel blue dial option, which will be back in the shop anytime now. So depending on I guess depending on whenever you watch this. But with that said, let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get this piece in hand. Throw out my field notes backdrop there, and really just enjoy this piece. So I mean, a lot of what this watch is about is the look, so I'm gonna let you guys get a couple of good looks at it. But I think what a lot of people don't know who haven't really handled Halios watches in person is the build quality is absolutely, I mean, just profound. I mean, for under $1,000, and this isn't just a $999 watch. This is $735, so it's well below $1,000 to have this level of fit and finish. I mean, it's just insane. Look at the way the bevels, just the clean transition, the way everything mates and fits really tightly together. You're getting, of course, the highly desirable female end link there, fully articulated, flat brushed, with full bevels, guys. I know some of you are gonna say, oh, a lot of people are doing the flat brushing now, but you know what, they're not going with the full bevels. You can see here there's an inner, just up and down, top to bottom, the beveling and the light play that comes off of that is outstanding. You see this really immaculate clasp, love it. And it's one of the best in the business for this very reason here. You press the button, and then you can get your extension, which is great. Boom. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 clicks, and there you have it. And then if you want to release it a little bit, this is what I do when I set it. Typically, I'll just put it all the way out, and I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4 clicks in. Then it just kind of depends on the day if I want to release it out a little bit. But you can see beautiful bevel, fully integrated there onto the clasp, which is great. Signed, of course. Very simplistic case back, but I mean, this thing's gorgeous. So let's really, I did touch on those specs in the beginning of the video, but 38 millimeters, guys, this thing is really well sized. And it doesn't wear like a super small, it wears like a 38 millimeter should. It's not some super undersized, very particular, classic type of watch. It's a fully modern watch, but it does have a classic proportion to it, but still I believe in a more modern scale, which I really love. And then that 11 millimeters thick, that's including that beautiful double domed sapphire, so it's even thinner. I mean, if you just look at the actual profile of the watch itself, it's quite thin, and very, very impressive from that standpoint. The crown is signed, but it is just a push-pull crown. This one is not a screw down like you'll find on the Fairwind Diver. But, you know, it really doesn't need to be, and it probably is better that it's not, because this is actually using a hand-wound movement. It's going to have your Sellita SW210-1, and this is a no-date spec for Halios. Same way that the automatic is a no-date spec from Sellita. This is the same as well, so there is no ghost position. You just pull it out and it's a single position. There's wind while it's pushed, the crown is pushed in, and then you pull it out, it hacks, and there you have it. So really great to set the time. You're not getting the ghost date, which is something that a lot of people kind of have pet peeves about. I don't mind a ghost date, but it is really just phenomenal when you don't have to worry about that, because more so for me, it means that in the comments I don't have to listen to everybody whine to me about why didn't they use a movement that didn't have a ghost date setting, or, you know, all that ghost crown setting. It's silly. So glad I don't have to bat anyone down in the comments about not really caring about that feature, you know, super passionately. So this double dome sapphire does have inner AR coating, which it uses really well, and you can see here, of course, under the studio lights, there's really no way to negotiate, you know, direct flash like that. But I will say, out and about in real time, out in the real world, in the metal, this thing renders very beautifully, and you can really see the details of that very gorgeous dial there, and the shades and the hues that it's able to hit with that pastel blue. Now, the dial is, you know, quite simple. It does have that beautiful pastel blue color. It has these great applied indices, and it does use Swiss Superluminova C3. And, you know, the thing about C3 is it glows really bright, but when it is in daylight circumstances, it's not super white. It does have a bit of a tint to it, and honestly, I don't mind it. Would I have still enjoyed this watch if it was using BGW9? Sure. I think it would have still looked great. I think the C3, though, still looks outstanding, and it definitely glows a lot brighter than BGW9. So really beautiful from that standpoint. This one only has 10 atmospheres or 100 meters of water resistance versus the Fairwind Diver, but it's kind of all you need. Definitely splash proof and whatnot. 20 millimeter lugs, not that you'd ever want to take it off of this gorgeous bracelet, but you know, if you did, this thing actually transitions into quite a strap monster. In terms of this bracelet, I mean, it is a real showstopper here. It does taper, and it is flat brushed, multi-links, fully articulated, high polished bevels. You're taking it from 20 millimeters down to a 16 millimeter taper. It does have screw in connectors, so that is a thing of beauty. And then you do have a milled 18.5 millimeter push button folding clasp, of course, with that beautiful toolless micro adjustment system, which is fantastic. So with all that said, let's go ahead, get this piece on the wrist, and see how it wears. Okay, everybody, as you can see on my 7¼ inch wrist, this thing wears beautifully, and it actually lays beautifully, it contours gorgeously around the wrist. So, I mean, even if you're not a fan of the aesthetic, the way that this thing functionally just drapes over the wrist is absolutely hard to argue with. My goodness, really beautiful, guys. And even with that double domed sapphire there, you can see that it still renders quite flat and thin on the wrist, which is a very nice trick. And then the nice thing is, because it is double domed, even at very harsh angles there, it's still going to be quite legible. So really beautiful, guys. And even up close, when you got a lot of lens distortion there making it seem bigger than it really is, it still doesn't appear oversized. And I think a lot of that has to do with the dial spacing. I like that, you know, you do have kind of levels there, not quite a full sector style dial, but you do have those little cues, those little markers there that do a fine job of spacing in between, whether it's the outer minute track or the inner hour section there being a little bit closer to the center. And then of course just minimalist type face all over this bad boy. The 10 atmospheres, the Halios name with the logo. It's just really well balanced, even down to the mechanical down at the 6 o'clock. Just, again, design wise, execution wise, this thing just pulls out all the stops and really should cost a lot more. It really absolutely should. This is easily a $1,200 timepiece, and somehow you can get it for less than $750, which is really quite impressive. So with that said, let's actually get it back off the wrists, set it up for some low light transition and loom shots, and then move into our closing thoughts. Okay, we'll go ahead and hit the lights here. As you can see, this C3 is absolutely blasting, very thickly applied, but also very well applied. Not blurry, not smudgy, all very sharply done, very precisely executed, and just well within those lines. But one thing I like to do when I do these loom shots is really work in some low light transition, because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of the times you're going to be coming in and out of a building, maybe walking underneath an overhang, the shade of a tree, or maybe just spending time in your favorite automobile. So what I like to do is just see what this will render like in transitional lighting, whether it be the color palette or even the finishing there. So I'll even work in some very unflattering high contrast lighting, which typically will expose any type of defects within that finishing. You can see it looks outstanding. I probably could have faced, you know, probably looked a little bit better under the harsher lighting if I had given it a good rinse. It's been quite the hot summer this year here in Oceanside, California, and I will say that there's probably some sunblock residue kind of smudged onto that watch right now. But I think that just goes to show that although I have an outstandingly huge, ginormous collection from doing this channel, this watch has found its way into my weekly rotation, and it is tough to get out of it. I mean, honestly, it inspired me to buy a couple of shirts that really tie into it. So that's really fun when you get a watch that it kind of makes you go out of your way to find other ways to make it a little bit more competitive when it comes to what makes it into your weekly wardrobe. And you can see even now still that loom is absolutely outstanding, pumping away. Very, very impressive. So we'll go ahead and get these lights back on, and yeah, closing thoughts, guys, on the wrist. Absolutely classic proportions here, and it definitely has this distinctly modern touch in terms of its aesthetics, and it's perfectly balanced and blended to create something truly unique. The case contours taper both the visual and physical weight down to make it a watch wear much, much thinner, which is something that I think most people kind of look for, and it's an absolute treat when it comes to a beautiful sports watch like this. In terms of model variants, definitely check the links for availability. These are made in relatively small batches, so definitely hang in there. Believe me, guys, it took me years before I got my hands on a Halios watch, and when I finally did, I understood what the absolute drama and what the fuss was all about. And yeah, all it took was one, and now there's two. So if that tells you anything, and yeah, I did buy this with my own money. I didn't get any special favors or anything like that. I did get to know know a little bit ahead of time when things would be ready and whatnot. But I mean, honestly, anybody can give Jason a shout on Instagram, and typically he answers pretty well. So even before I did reviews for this brand, I absolutely did poke my head around quite a bit for a few months, especially leading up to the Fairwind release. Now, in terms of comparable models, guys, due to the insane quality and lower pricing, this really ends up being comparable to much more expensive watches with a similar build, but much lower quality pieces costing similar. So either you compare this to something a lot more expensive to make it comparable by the build quality, or you're going to compare it to something because of the price point, but then the build quality is totally on a different level. Not to say that they are bad watches in the under $750 range, but they just don't really stack up in comparison to this beautiful piece. This watch is absolutely in the conversation for me, you know, for best mechanical watch under $1,000. But the crazy thing is that it costs closer to $700. I think it would still be very, very compelling at $1,200, guys. That's how good this thing is. And that's with a brand that technically is a micro brand and has no name, right? Like I mean, yeah, it's building a heritage and whatnot. It's been around since 2009. It has a great story. Watch aficionados seem to love this brand. But in general, if you were to lay it down next to something within the Swatch group or, you know, anything Japanese, yeah, it would probably pale in comparison in terms of horological significance. But, you know, Halios isn't really a no-name brand at this point. It's highly desirable. And when it comes to even just the value of these pieces, the trends are true. I mean, these watches resell for quite a lot. So I will never find out because I would never sell this. But for those of you that are those serial flippers and they just, you know, for one watch to come into the collection, another one has to leave and whatnot, this is going to be a very, very safe $735 from that standpoint. Guys, for me, the bottom line here with the Halios Universa, along with the Fairwind Diver, they're really just setting a new gold standard for what an independent micro brand can offer for the money. They're just doing amazing things, and it's not even in these huge batch runs, which means that technically, in terms of cost, these are costing Halios more to produce than something like a Christopher Ward, where they're doing huge batches, huge runs, all these different models all happening at the same time. Of course, they're going to be able to buy those, you know, those main components, let's say like a movement in bulk, and save a lot of money. And they're going to have bracelets that go not just across 2 models, but 4, 5, 6 with a bunch of different dial options. So like in terms of the, you know, taking advantage by the economies of scale, Halios isn't doing that. And somehow, just because it is such a one-man show with Jason, he's still able to gift the watch community with such an awesome offering. So let me know, though, what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked the video, please do hit like. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.